Welcome back to Cooking with TheDoerle. I'm your host, TheDoerle. On today's episode, we're going to be making a bruschetta chicken with baked zucchini and butternut squash. Enjoy. Welcome back again to Cooking with TheDoerle. You know, I love this time of year. It's late summer, and there's always an overflow of produce coming from people's gardens. It gives me some of my favorite things to cook: tomatoes, zucchini, and squash. With that in mind, I wanted to put together a whole meal for you today. And that's why we're going to do the chicken bruschetta, the baked zucchini, and the baked squash. It's something we can put it all in the oven at just about the same time and have it all come out all at the same time. To make this meal, we're going to need a few ingredients, but a lot of it is the same thing going from dish to dish. First, for the bruschetta chicken, I've got some chicken breasts here. These are large whole chicken breasts, but are boneless and skinless. What I'm going to do is cut the breast in half and then cut each of these breasts in half. So I'm going to wind up with 4 pieces. And that's going to be more than enough for me and my family. I've got about a cup of flour, and I went ahead and used whole wheat flour. I sifted it out to get all the big holes out of there. We have a couple of eggs, a half cup of Parmesan cheese, and a full cup of breadcrumbs. Next, for the bruschetta that we're going to put on top of the chicken, I've got 3 nice ripe red tomatoes from the garden. I've got a couple tablespoons of basil, 2 cloves of garlic. We have onion salt, and that's going to be more to taste. We also have olive oil and balsamic vinegar. You're only going to use about a tablespoon of each of them. You're not going to need very much. Next, for the baked zucchini, we've got 1 really large zucchini here. I'm actually going to make some over this after the show, just so I have more for later on. But that, we're going to be using olive oil for it. We're also going to be using breadcrumbs, Parmesan cheese, and some shredded mozzarella. And finally, for the butternut squash, I've got some olive oil, just about 1/3 of a cup, salt and pepper, and that's just going to be to taste, and 1 garlic clove. Now let's go ahead and get started making this meal. Alright, since the idea is to make this whole recipe and have it all go in at the same time and cook at the same time and go relatively fast, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the thing that's going to take the longest, and that's actually the zucchini. What we're going to want to do is we're going to chop the zucchini up into about 1/2-inch slices, just right against the grain, and we're going to throw it in a large bowl with cold water and some salt. That's going to help draw some of the moisture out of the zucchini, and it's going to make sure they stay nice and crisp as it's cooking. They'll still be tender, but it won't be completely mushy. So what you want to do is just take your zucchini, cut into it here. You want to get down into the seeds. And actually, this one's gotten a little bit woodier than I like, because it is a really large zucchini. We're going to cut a little bit further down. There we go. You see the meat is still nice and good in there. We're just going to cut it into 1/2-inch slices, and I'm just looking to get enough here to cover a baking sheet. Nice large slices. You might call this peasant cut, where it's large bits. We're going to get a few more here. And since there's 4 pieces of chicken, I'm actually looking for about 12 to 16 slices. We've got 3, 9, 3, 6, 9, 10, 12. These are really large pieces, so that's going to be plenty for us right there. We'll put this aside and I'll cook it a little bit later. We can just toss these slices in here. I'm going to reach back, grab a little of my salt, shake it on top. Then I'll go over to my sink. I'm going to fill this with cold water, and we're going to set it aside. Next, we're going to work on the bruschetta, because you kind of want to give that just a few minutes to rest as well and let all the flavors combine. Alright, we've got our ingredients here for the bruschetta. This is a really simple recipe. We've got garlic. We're going to take 2 cloves of garlic. I've already minced up 1 of them. Just took the flat of my blade to crush it, knock all that skin off. Then we'll mince it down real fine real quick. And this is a really simple recipe. I've seen others real similar. I've seen a few different ones that don't use balsamic. I like it because I like the flavor it gives. It's a real earthy type tone that it gives to it almost. We'll go and mince this garlic up. I love fresh garlic. I'm constantly going through it. I use it in almost everything I cook. I guess I don't have to worry about vampires. Alright, we've got 2 cloves of garlic there. We're going to take all that and toss it in one of my large measuring cups. If you've got a larger bowl, like a 1-quart bowl or something, you use that too. I just like measuring cups. I bought a bunch of these plastic ones for really cheap. So they're great for just mixing small things and tossing them in there. Next we've got our garden tomatoes. I'm going to cut the top off of them. Because no matter how ripe they are, that's still going to be a little bit sour. It's going to add a bitter quality that you don't really like. And most people aren't going to notice it. It's pretty subtle, but it's there. And just little subtle things you can do with your cooking. If you can do something that adds just a tiny bit more flavor, and you do that with everything, it's going to make everything you make taste a lot better. That's a lot of the reason I like cooking so much. I like the love and the effort that goes into it, and seeing things come together, and seeing the enjoyment of my friends and family when they eat something that I prepared and I've taken my time and tried to learn little tricks about. We're taking the tomatoes and we're going to dice them up. I'd like to dice them up a little bit smaller because this is actually going to be put on top of the chicken, and you don't want it all rolling off and clumping up. So we're going to make relatively small dice, about 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit larger. This is such a great recipe. It's really simple. I paid next to nothing for it, and that's a big thing with me. You know, food is getting really expensive. Everything is getting expensive. But the chicken breasts, I only paid $1.79 a pound for them. They were already boneless and skinless. Had a great deal on that. All the produce I got from friends' gardens. There we go. That's a great thing too, sharing food with your friends and your family and your neighbors. I try to get to know my neighbors wherever I live, especially the ones that have gardens. I like to grow one every year. I haven't had one this year. I just moved into this house. So it's nice to get to know them and get some of their produce, do some favors for them when I can, and next year I'll trade them stuff from my garden. You know, food that I might be growing. I'm going to grow some okra, and I know that's not real common around here in the Midwest. I'm originally from the South, so I grew up eating quite a bit of okra. It was amazing food, great little vegetable. Slimy, very slimy though. Alright, we've almost got our tomatoes all done here. And there's actually going to be more bruschetta here than I need, but I always like to make a little bit extra, just so you can serve it as a garnish on the side. Because you're going to cook this on the chicken, it's going to change the texture, it's going to change the color a little bit. So it's nice to have some just for something bright to throw on top of the chicken at the end. Because you remember, you always eat with your eyes first. So it's important to make your food look good. You know, you can take the best looking food and cook it to look like slop. And it's going to taste like slop. It might taste good, but people are going to look at it and be turned off by it. Now if you take subpar ingredients and you put them all together and make something that tastes mediocre, but it looks beautiful, people are going to be tricked into thinking it's better than it is. It's a little bit wild. That's why they do the blind taste test. Alright, and our tomatoes are just about done. One more slice here. They're kind of rough cut. That last one was getting pretty ripe. And I should have sharpened my knife before we did this shot. But we'll get those all into the measuring cup here. Now I didn't worry about de-seeding these tomatoes. That might be something you'd like to do. And it doesn't really do too much for it. It changes the flavor a little bit. It makes it a little bit less moist, but it's still going to be good the way we have it. I've got the 2 tablespoons of basil. Throw that in there. And I'm just going to kind of eye out about a tablespoonish of olive oil into here. Some of my balsamic vinegar, about another tablespoon of that. Not as much as the oil though. Whenever you're making any kind of vinaigrette or anything like that, you always want to have more oil than vinegar, and you want to have it in about a 3-to-1 ratio. But for this, I like to put a little bit more vinegar in there. And I'll just stir that around. Now we're going to set this aside for a few minutes, and we're going to let all these flavors incorporate. And next we're going to start on our chicken. And now would be a really good time also to start preheating your oven. You're going to want to preheat it to about 385 degrees. Alright, we've got all of our ingredients here together for the chicken. Now, I want to say something about this. We're using raw chicken and raw eggs, and you always need to worry about cross-contamination in the kitchen. And what that is when you mix different foods. We cleaned off our cutting board since we cut our vegetables. After we cut the chicken and we mess around with the eggs, we're going to clean all the utensils from that too. Because cross-contamination spreads germs from one surface to another. When we cook everything, we cook it up to the temperature it needs to be at, so it's going to kill off any bacteria that might hurt you or your family or make you sick. But you always want to watch out for that because it's real easy to leave a little bit of chicken blood or something on your counter if you don't wipe it off. Say you put a piece of bread there, or even you wipe it off with a towel that you go and you wipe some other surface off with. What you're doing is you're just spreading that stuff around, so you need to watch out for that. I like to throw that in there. I'm not trying to scare anyone from cooking. I'm just trying to make sure you make the best and healthiest food possible. With that being said, let's go and get our chicken breasts. These are massive. They were 2 4.5 pound packages, and each package had 2 of these monsters in here. Now, I am not going to serve one of these chicken breasts as a single serving. That's just way too much. What we're going to do is I'm going to place my hand on top of the chicken, put my knife horizontally about midway up. We're just going to go ahead and cut right down the middle of this here. Be careful with your hands. You don't want to cut yourself. Alright. There we go. And let's get this other one cut here. This is such a large breast that my knife almost isn't long enough. Alright. We've got 4 still extremely large breasts. I could actually cut these down in half again, but I'm going to leave them like that. I like to eat a lot of chicken, and it's relatively healthy, very low in fat. Now we're going to set our knife off into the sink. I'm going to wash my hands, then we're going to come back and we're going to beat our eggs. Alright, I've got my hands washed. Now we need our eggs. What we're going to do is make a quick egg bath here. Just break your egg on the edge. Crack it open. Oh, looks like I've got some rogue shell in there. Don't want that. Not making crunchy tin eggs. Take your fork, just break the yolks up a little bit, and give it a good whip. We're just looking to mix it. You don't want to whip it too much, not till it becomes stiff. Just enough to get all that yolk and that white all incorporated there. See, it's all nice and pretty uniformly yellow. Perfect. We'll just throw our fork in here. I'm going to wash my hands again because, once again, raw eggs. Alright, once again, I have my hands freshly washed. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our chicken, we're going to run it through the flour to give it a surface for the egg to bind to. Then we're going to set it here in the pan, and we're going to sprinkle a mixture of the Parmesan cheese and the breadcrumbs. This is kind of a small bowl, but that's okay. We're just looking to coat the chicken. Then we'll run it through breadcrumb, or through the egg. You know, really, if you're trying to watch your calories on this, you might want to try just using egg whites or an egg substitute even. And we've got our last one going through the flour. Making quite a mess over here, as always. I'm a bit of a messy cook, but I like to clean as I go. So it helps maintain it. Alright, just get the last of that egg in there. Get this breast in here. And we're going to do a little bit of rearranging, just with how we have them in there. They're a little bit too bunched up on each other. There we go, that gives them a little bit more room. Because if they're too bunched up on each other, it's going to take a lot longer for them to cook. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands. I'm going to clean off all my work surfaces, and then we're going to finish this up. Alright, we've got our chicken here, and it's all snuggled up in the pan. It's coated in the flour and the egg. Now we've taken our breadcrumbs and the Parmesan cheese and just kind of tossed it together. What we're going to do now is just kind of sprinkle it over the chicken. Not got to be too precise, and doesn't even have to be too thick of a coating. Use as much or as little as you want. You know, if I don't put it on the bottom, because if you put too much of it in there, it gets real doughy. It's something I've never really liked about stuff like shake and bake type mixes. They get real doughy because it coats the whole thing and on the bottom, unless you're cooking with very little oil, and this is pretty high moisture right here. You've got all the egg, and the breast is going to have a lot of moisture in it. But just go ahead and coat this whole thing here. Alright, we've got plenty of this left over for something else later on. Maybe I'll just use that for the zucchini. Now I have a piece of aluminum foil, and I'm going to put it shiny side facing the chicken. Make sure all that radiant heat stays in there, that infrared radiant. And we're just going to kind of put it on here loosely. It's not super tight, just right around the corners. I'll pinch it down so it stays on. Now this is going to cook for about 20 minutes in the oven, but for now we're going to throw it in the fridge while we finish up our zucchini and squash. Alright, as you can see, I've drained my zucchini and I've dried it off a little bit. I just patted it down with a towel. I'm going to throw just a little bit of olive oil in here, maybe about quarter cup, third cup. Set that off to the side. We're going to take the zucchini and just kind of toss it around, just like you were sauteing something in a pan. You just want to flip it around, make sure it gets all nice and coated. And we still have some of that Parmesan and breadcrumb mixture left from the chicken. We're going to go ahead and take some garlic salt, because I like my zucchini garlicky. I like everything garlicky. The salt is going to actually be really good in here. And I threw a little bit more Parmesan and breadcrumbs, the stuff that I had reserved for this part of the recipe. Threw that in there. We take our zucchini slices and just dredge it in here. Make sure it gets nice and coated. Press it down a little bit. Be gentle taking it out and set it on your pan. Now when I originally ran across this recipe, it called for the pan to be oiled. Nice and greased down or something, but I found something like this. It's already got the olive oil on there. You don't necessarily have to do that. That's just my opinion. I have a nice spatula, the nice flat spatula that I can pull it up out of there with, so I have no problems getting it off my pans. We're going to go and coat all these. Alright, just lay them on there. Nice big thick pieces. These are really good. We're going to throw some mozzarella on there, so we're going to cook them and flip them about halfway through. And I think a few of them with that extra bruschetta, I might just throw some of that on there too. It'd be really tasty. I've done that before with a baked eggplant, and it turned out really well. Alright. Now you can actually cook these on a higher temperature and slice them thinner, and they'll get really crispy. Cook them at maybe 400, 420 degrees, and slice them a quarter-inch thick or thinner, with a nice fresh tender zucchini, a smaller one that's only maybe an inch or so in diameter. Those are really good as well. Maybe I'll make that in a later episode. Some oven fried zucchini chips. Those will be really good with some salt and vinegar. Alright, we've just about all got all these in here. This is going to be a phenomenal meal. My girlfriend is going to go crazy for it. I'm hoping that we can finish up shooting just in time for her to get home, be able to try it with me fresh. Maybe this could be her 15 minutes of fame in the YouTube world. Dining with TheDoerle. Alright, we have just enough space here on our pan to fit all of our zucchini. We're going to set that aside for just 1 minute, and we're going to make our butternut squash now. Alright, now it's time to make the last component of our meal, and that's going to be our butternut squash. I've got my olive oil in one of my large measuring cups. I've got a clove of garlic minced up, throw that in there, and a couple of turns of pepper. Only a couple of turns. I have flavor restrictions in my household. That's okay though. We've got some salt, about a half teaspoon. Okay, now we've got our squash here. Go and lop the end off of it. Should be nice and dense. Lop the other side off. Fantastic. Look at that nice orange color. There's a lot of things you can do with this squash. It's make soups, make all kinds of things with it. Discard those. We're going to scoop out the seeds. And I think I may just keep these seeds. I'll probably go and I'll pull the seeds out of the pulp and put them into a dry paper towel, into a couple of them, fold them over and let them sit for a day or two until they dry out, and then I'll put them in a small brown paper bag, and I'll save those for spring. Or actually I should plant them this fall since it's a winter squash. Alright, we'll set those aside here. Take our knife, start cutting into this. It's a very dense gourd. we're just going to go ahead and cube it up. Get that seed out of there. We don't want to cut that. It's next to your squash. Alright, we have these pieces. And once again, just big chunks. About a ½ inch, 3/4 of an inch, whatever you like with your size. Alright, cut these down. This one's a little bit large. I'm going to cut it down again. It's from that big bulb at the end. Cut that. Toss that in with our oil, and our garlic, and our salt and pepper. We'll work on this other one here. Go on, cut through it. Cut through it again. And I'm going to go ahead and cut it this way. This way we wind up with the size pieces that I want. Okay. Now if you grow something like this in your garden, pretty much any gourd, you need to make sure it has its own space because it will take over. It'll send out tendrils and it will just take over the rest of your plants. It will grow up your trellises for your beans and your tomatoes. It'll send shoots out everywhere. I've seen these things grow up out of compost piles when somebody threw the seeds into them not knowing they were there. Okay. Got all of our pieces here. And we're just going to give them a toss. Just trying to coat everything in that salt and pepper and garlic. And get it mixed throughout. Whoa, losing a few pieces. I told you here first, I make a mess in the kitchen. Alright. What we'll do with this, so we'll just toss it all out here onto one of our baking sheets. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put the chicken and the zucchini on the top rack, just above the middle. And then we're going to put this on the rack just below them. They're all going to cook at about the same speed. And now I'm going to put everything into the oven, and I'm going to set my timer for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, the zucchini will need to be flipped over, and the chicken should be around 165 degrees. I'm going to put the bruschetta on top. At that point, I'll probably put a little bit of bruschetta and mozzarella on a few of these zucchinis, and we'll throw it all back in the oven for about another 20 minutes. And it should come out piping hot, ready to go, and fantastic. Alright, our food is cooking. You hear the timer going off. I'm going to go and shut that thing up. And you can see how we have everything placed in the oven. We've got our zucchini here. Our chicken wrapped in its foil. And our butternut squash roasting away. Alright, everything just came out of the oven, and I've got it on some cooling racks on my countertop here. I'm going to go and check the chicken with my trusty digital thermometer. Turn it on. We're just going to get that into the thickest part of the meat. And we're shooting up past 130, 140, good, 145, at 150. Alright, we're at 158. 162, which is going to be close enough for me. That's all I really needed at. Okay, we don't want to leave all the food out for too long. That's very important because it'll slow down the cooking. And just spoon some of this bruschetta over the thickest part of the chicken breast. Give it a nice big spoonful over every one to begin with. Make sure you have enough for everything. Alright, and we can do a little bit more on all of them. So I really like the flavor it gives to the chicken breast. Nice, tart. While we're in here, let's go and make sure it's not cooking together. Just run your spatula between the pieces here. Now since this chicken isn't cooked all the way, and I put it in between there, I'm going to have to go and take the spatula and throw it in the sink. Grab another one out of my drawer. This right here is good to go. We're going to set it off to the side. We're going to bring our zucchini and our squash up here. We're just going to go and flip all these. And as you can see, I've got no problem getting them off the pan. There's enough oil on them. I don't like to add too much oil or fat to my food anymore. I'm really trying to watch my weight. My cardiologist informed me that I'm on a bad track again. I had a heart attack about 3 years ago because of my weight, and I prefer it not to happen again. So, it's another great reason to cook recipes like this. Really low fat, high fiber, which is really good for you. Tomatoes have lycopene in them, which is very good for you. Alright, these look fantastic. Now, like I said, I had that extra bruschetta. First, let's go and flip this squash. Now this stuff is starting to get tender, and it's starting to get a nice roasted look to it. We've got it all flipped out, and let's go and spread it out. Let's get in there. Take this bruschetta and just give it maybe a tablespoon of it on each of these here that you can with what's left over. Save a little bit for your chicken as a little bit of a garnish. We're just going to put it on a few. We're going to take this mozzarella. Here I am talking about being healthy, loaded up with cheese. Actually though, mozzarella is made from low-fat milk, as is the Parmesan. Harder cheeses and white cheeses, if you're going to use them, are the way to go if you're trying to be a little bit health conscious. You know what, we've got just a little bit of this mozzarella left. We're going to throw that on top of the chicken too. Just add a little bit of white on top of the red when it comes out of the oven. Now we're going to put it all back in, still at 385 degrees for another 20 minutes. Then we'll be prepared for an amazing feast. Well, everything's out of the oven. Pulled it out right at the end of the 20 minutes. The room is filled with just such an amazing smell of garlic, and you can smell the squash, all these flavors, the tomato cooking. I've got my plate in here in front of me. I've got a little bit of the squash, 3 of the zucchini, big chicken breast, and I threw just a little bit of mozzarella and a little bit of oregano on top, just to bring up a little bit more aroma and flavor, and a little bit of green on top of the white of the cheese. Let's go and get a close-up of this, and then I'll take a taste of it. Alright, this looks fantastic. Let's go ahead and cut into the chicken. Let's see how that looks. I'm really excited about that. I've made this recipe a few times, and it's always turned out really well. As you can see, chicken is nice and white. All the juice coming out of it is really clear. I'm going to cut a piece off right here. That's the one I'm going to try. We've got our squash, nice and roasted. Some real nice brown bits on it. Nice and soft as well. And our zucchini turned out really good with that bruschetta and the mozzarella on top of it. Cut through it. It's nice and firm, but it's still really tender. Let's go ahead and give this a taste. Look at that zucchini. Let's have a taste of that. And that's really good. Cooked all the way through, all the flavors there. You taste those breadcrumbs and the Parmesan in it. And that bruschetta and mozzarella adds just the right flavor to it, just enough of a zing. This squash just melts in your mouth. I'm gonna have more of that. Now let's have a piece of this chicken. I'm really excited about this big piece. That's what you want when you cook a chicken breast. It's tender, it's juicy, it's not dry at all. The egg wash and the breadcrumbs on it bring out so much flavor and help seal so much in. Then you have that bruschetta, the warm tomato and basil and garlic flavor on top of it. The mozzarella, just a tiny hint of it. And that smooth flavor. This is really an incredible meal. I'm going to have to go and make a plate for Angela so she's fed when she gets home. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Cooking with TheDoerle. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. Remember, always do whatever you can when you're cooking. Try to explore and find new things, and try to make it your own. And try to do it as best as you can. Let me guarantee you, whoever eats your food is going to be happy. Till next time, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I'll be putting more episodes up as soon as I can. We've got a few episodes that are ready to be edited and posted as well. So we'll have more up really soon. Well then, enjoy.